It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Hope you are having an excellent Friday. We got a fun show planned, another stressful day putting it together because it's the middle of July and what's going on. Turns out, enough. Got NBA Summer League kicking off tonight. We'll talk to George Sedano before you watch him on television tonight. The TV coverage starts at 5. George going to join us right at 4:30. We got MLB All-Star Weekend. Clinton Yates and his binoculars are going to join us later in the show. So pretty pumped about that. Neil DeLaw's with us from Las Vegas. We got a bunch of stuff coming. But we're going to start today, actually, it's the middle of summer. People are starting to get ready for their fantasy football drafts. And Anthony, you, sir, presented a question. First of all, especially for those watching on YouTube, we have to introduce, we can't just have another person in studio sitting behind you. And yeah, see, Chris did the thing that we always say, hey, say hi to the internet. And he waved without us even prompting him. So who is with you today, Anthony, in case people are watching on the stream?
I will allow him to introduce himself.
I just asked you to do it.
Oh. Well, I know his name is Chris.
Okay, Chris, you're going to tell us more about yourself briefly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm Chris. I'm a new board op here, and I'm just training right now. So,
okay.
You'll probably see me more regularly in a few weeks. But
excellent.
Yeah.
Welcome to the station. Welcome to the show. Surprise, we're on video. Anthony, you presented me a question before the show based off of PFF releasing their fantasy draft guide. Is Terry McLaurin a top 10 fantasy wide receiver? It's a good question. My initial instinct was nobody's close, and that doesn't mean I wouldn't want him as one of the top 10 receivers that I would take overall in the NFL for, like, winning football games. But obviously, for fantasy, you're looking at it through a different lens. What statistical production is this guy going to get? Who's going to be the target in the red zone? Obviously, that's a huge one. What's the big play potential? And on some of these, I think Terry scores very high. You want to talk about big play potential, I think McLaurin's got it as much as basically anybody in the league. Not only is a deep ball over the top guy, but we haven't seen him doing it in a while, but like in college, dude would catch slants and take it 80 yards to the house all day. He's 4.3, 7-ish fast. Not that many guys are going to catch him. So if Sam can get him the ball quickly in space, I feel like Terry's touchdown production could go up. He's had over 1,000 yards basically every year, but I think he suffers because he's one of many weapons that they have in an unproven offense with an unproven quarterback. Unproven in terms of Bieniemy just hasn't done this here before. Obviously, the offense has worked. He's only coordinated the top offense in the NFL the last 5 seasons. Mahomes may have something to do with that. But here's PFF's list. Justin Jefferson is first. That seems easy. Correct, Anthony? Any qualms with Justin Jefferson first?
None at all.
Yeah, Kevin O'Connell's entire life plan is to get him like 200 touches. Yeah, I'm going to say JJ's first.
Yeah.
He got what?
I said he was close last year. He had 184 targets. Just
Yeah.
targets.
Yeah. It's insane.
Yeah.
It's absolutely ridiculously insane. So they've got him as wide receiver 1, number 3 overall. Average draft position, I guess, is they've got him at 1.4. So he's at 3, and most people are being like, nope, that's not good enough. Jamar Chase at 4. If he's healthy, he could go for 1,500 yards. He's that good. I think Jamar Chase, with all due respect to Jefferson, I think Jamar Chase is the best receiver in football currently.
Ooh, spicy Craig Hoffman.
I don't think that's that spicy. He's so explosive.
That's fair.
And, like, if you swap him and JJ, they'd still be awesome in both places. But, like, you give Jamar Chase 184 targets, good gracious, to quote, you.
And he already has to split with T. Higgins, who I deem as another wide receiver 1. So I think your point is definitely very valid.
All right, 3rd, 7th overall, they've got Cooper Kupp. Obviously, Sean's going to try to get him the ball, and he is a catch machine. But he is 30, and he was hurt last year, and who knows their quarterback situation. I might bump him down and put Tyreek Hill ahead of him. Tyreek is their, wide receiver 4. 8th overall. He's the ultimate big play guy. Like, he's just going to score touchdowns because he's Tyreek Hill, and he's faster than everybody else in the league, bar none. He runs like a 10-3 100. He's track fast, and he plays in the NFL. Any qualms?
I still like Cooper Kupp. We fail to forget, 2 seasons ago, Cooper Kupp won the Triple Crown.
His quarterback had an elbow then.
Yeah, you're right.
All right, Stephon Diggs is wide receiver 5. No issues there. This is where, so I feel like I'm now in Cowboy hater mode. And I'm not like a lifelong Washingtonian who grew up hating the Cowboys. I just think they're overrated as hell this year. Maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe they'll be good. I don't love CeeDee Lamb as wide receiver 6. I don't, yes, they're going to try to give him the ball. Yes, Dak is very good. Yes, I think CD is excellent. I do not trust McCarthy and Schottenheimer at all. Zippo, zilch. I think they're going to try to overly run the football. And I also think they'll probably force things to, their big plays will be drawn up for Brandon Cooks and Michael Gallup instead of CD. And that doesn't mean he won't generate big plays because he's that damn good. But I would, we'll get to obviously who they have at 7, 8, 9, etc. I might bump him almost outside of the top 10.
I'm not taking CeeDee Lamb as my wide receiver number 6 either, Craig. I'm right there with you.
He's 14th overall, average draft position on PFF, 15.6. Devontae is 7. I think he's that's right. He's right there with JJ, and from a skill standpoint, right? It's Jefferson, it's Chase, it's Adams. Those are the 3 best, pure. You draft anyone to win football games, receivers, I think, in the league. He was still ridiculous last year, even though their offense was a disaster. Now, their quarterback situation is up in the air because, a reminder, Jimmy Garoppolo has not passed his physical. That is a problem. They are very unsure of him. So, if he plays, though, I think they'll get the ball to Devontae a lot. I think that's a game plan type of thing. I'm fine with Devontae as wide receiver 7. A.J. Brown is 8. Monster, good. Amon-Ra St. Brown, love that. He's, especially, this is PPR-based rankings. He's going to have 115 catches as long as he's healthy. What was it, 8 straight games? He had 8+ catches last year, something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
Nuts.
Golf, that's his number 1 guy.
Yeah. And now, especially, just like last year, Jameson Williams starts the year not playing. This year because of suspension, last year because of injury. And then their 10 is Garrett Wilson from the Jets. And I think that if Aaron Rodgers is 75% of prime Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson is 75% as good as I think he is, he's definitely at least wide receiver 10. That dude is he might be, we did the quarterback tiers yesterday, and there was that tier that was like, what are we going to say a year from now? Like, best chance to be in the top a year from now? Garrett Wilson could be in the Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Devontae Adams conversation a year from now. He's that good.
1 year worth of GOAT.
We'll see what he does.
Not your GOAT. But.
So then where's no, not my GOAT. Although when from a pure football standpoint, he's as good as I've ever seen do it.
He's nasty.
Until Mahomes came along, but ayahuasca does things to a man. Jalen Waddle's their 11. T is 12. Olave is 13. Devontae Smith 14. DK 15. Keenan Allen 16. Debo 17. Amari Cooper 18. Calvin Ridley 19. And then they've got Terry as wide receiver 20. How many of those guys would you put Terry above?
So disrespectful. I just think in the system that Terry's going to be in, I think EB did a great job, getting the main players for the Chiefs in the box all the time. Tyreek Hill, he got his touchdowns. Travis Kelce got his touchdowns. And then you had, you sprinkled in some other ones just because they were scoring so much. But I'm thinking EB is going to make sure Terry gets into the end zone more often than he's previously done. So I'm thinking I got to move him up past a couple of guys.
All right, so let's go bracket method, right?
All right.
By the way, this is how you if you're ever at a restaurant and you can't decide what you want to eat, you just take the two menu items and you put them up against each other, and you keep going until you're down to one. That's what we're going to do. McLaurin or Ridley?
I'm going McLaurin.
All right. McLaurin or Amari Cooper?
I'm going McLaurin.
I am with you. McLaurin or Debo?
Ooh, this one's tough just because he plays running back as well.
I agree with that, which is why I'm actually going to skip it because I would move both of them up.
Okay.
So
that's fair.
Keenan Allen or McLaurin?
I'm going McLaurin just because he's always he's more durable.
Agreed.
Keenan.
McLaurin or DK?
I'm going to go McLaurin this year.
I do too, because I think there's a regression of the mean with Geno Smith. Here I go, hating on Geno Smith again. The season hasn't even started.
Hey, he's not going to write back to you, Craig. He's
not
writing back.
Don't tell Yates. Devontae Smith or Terry? See, to me, one's a 1, one's a 2. Devontae's awesome. I love him. He's so good.
1A, 1B over there in Philly, to be honest.
But they're also going to run the ball a ton. I would take Terry, I think. It's hard because we haven't seen this offense yet.
Yeah. I'm going to lean
Terry.
So
it's somewhere in that 13, 15. Olave or McLaurin?
I'm going to go Terry.
T or McLaurin?
You said CD?
No, T Higgins.
Oh, T Higgins. I love T Higgins.
I do too, and they also love T Higgins. Yeah, I think I would go T. So you're talking somewhere between 11. 11's Waddle. We agree not over Wilson, right?
Nah.
I also wouldn't put him over Waddle because he just scores. He's so fast.
Yeah.
He just scores. He has games. He won me so many fantasy games last year. So we're talking it should be somewhere between 11 and 15. And instead he's all the way down at 20.
But CD is so far up there, man.
Yeah, that's the one that blows my mind.
Bump him outside the top 10.
Everybody loves the Cowboys, man. It just is what it is. Vegas puts their over under if you're a Commanders person, you get to bet the over more often, and you get a little boost because everyone hates them. If you're Cowboys, you better bet the under because everyone's overrating them.
Yep.
It's just the way that it goes. All right, it's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. When we get back here on the show, we are going to, well, first of all, I'll tell you in 30 minutes, or not even 30 minutes, in 14 minutes at 4:30, George Sedano joins us. We'll get into some NBA stuff next, though. Kevin Durant was involved in an interesting tweet thread about player power. Is it bad for the league when guys like Dame try to force a trade to a specific place? We'll chop it up next here on the Team 980.
DC.
It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. So, Kevin Durant's got himself in plenty of trouble on Twitter over the years. I don't think this is one of those cases. And by the way, George Sedano joins us live from Las Vegas. 5 o'clock, ESPN's coverage of Vegas Summer League starts. George, our buddy Mark Kestisher, and Seth Greenberg on the call for the first two games, which will include Scoot Henderson's debut for the Blazers. But tying that all together, Blazers obviously looking to trade Damian Lillard. And Josh Eberle, who's an NBA media type blogger person, I don't know what to call him. He's very, very large Twitter following, and has written for a couple of websites. But he was going back and forth with Durant about how when players like Dame try to force their way into a situation like he is in Miami, and this comes on the heels of Dame saying basically, or people reporting that Dame won't show up to a team that's not the Miami Heat if they trade for him, that it's bad for the league. And Durant was basically like, whatever, dude, like we'll do what we want because we're the players. And Josh was like, look, I understand you're a pro player, but like this is bad. And Durant said kind of the quiet part out loud, which is that when teams and players do this stuff, nobody's really considering the fans. It's not a part of the equation. And this is where in a way, Anthony, I actually agree with both of them. But the question is it actually bad for the league? And it's a hard question to answer because it, in some ways, treats fans like a monolith. There are, obviously, if you're the team that's on the receiving end of the good thing, you're not going to take some moral stance about how you acquired one of the 10 best players in the sport. Heat fans, and look, Miami's not a place that most people look to for moral high ground, but Heat fans have never been like, it's such a shame what happened when we got LeBron and won a couple of championships. No. It's such a shame that Damian Lillard only wants to play for us. No, you just take Dame Lillard and run. Run as fast as you can towards the NBA Finals. Try to keep everyone healthy along the way. Maybe not as fast as you can. Pace yourself. Then win the race in the end. If you're in New York, like, you're not mad that, in Brooklyn, I should say, you're not mad at how you got Kevin Durant. You're mad at how he left. Even though, in many ways, it's, I guess that one's a little bit different because you sign him as a free agent and he leaves in a forced trade. But them's the breaks here in D.C. Like, people are mad at Beal because of the no trade clause, but they're partially mad at Beal. They're partially mad at the team. And, the team did something dumb. But for Beal, like, what are you mad at him for? All he did was take a contract that was offered to him, and he had a good negotiator in his agent, Mark Bartelstein. Or he didn't even, I don't know, Mark is very good, but he was negotiating apparently with a Mark in Shepard and Leonsis, who was like, well, got to give you that. Can't risk making him unhappy, as if paying him the maximum amount of money that you possibly could, that's more than any other team could possibly offer, wouldn't have done the trick. So I think most NBA fans, even if they don't know the intricacies of the CBA, and it'll take a couple of years for people to understand the repercussions of the second apron and, all these things, I think people know enough about the league to realize that there's a lot more to this. And at the end of the day, people want what's best for their teams. And we've all accepted the fact that the biggest free agents go to the same 5 places, and that it's on the rest of the teams to draft well, develop players, and it's been proven that you can win in Milwaukee, in Denver. Although they haven't won a championship in Oklahoma City, they were competitive for a decade. And even though your guy might leave and go be a Knick or a Laker, especially a Laker or a Heat player in the end, you enjoy them while you're there. You probably get the best years out of them. And if they want to be old in Miami, well, so does everybody else. I actually don't think it's a bad thing for the league. It's just accepted as part of the culture.
Yeah, I think that's what this fan also has to just understand. I think Dame gave it his all, out in Portland. And the direction that they're going, he can't necessarily sit around and, go through another rebuild. As painful as, a loss of Dame to Portland will be, he still only has so much time in this league, and he has to, make the most of it. So, him.
And they've been quietly rebuilding for years. And that's the other thing, right? Is like, if you're a player and you force your way out, right? One, you can't actually force your way out, right? The team still has to do it. Now, you can do what James Harden did, and James Harden did his best of a force your way out as anyone ever has. He was like, I'm fat and I'm not good anymore. Like, I'm out of shape. I'm not fit. I'm gonna be here in the clubs of Houston until you trade me. And I'm gonna play my way back into shape in Brooklyn and see how it goes. Oh, this Kyrie guy's nuts. Can someone trade me to Philly? The James Harden story. But I like, outside of that, teams typically do it because having a disgruntled star is not worth it. Because it isn't a good time. It can be bad. What Jimmy did in Minnesota, what James did in Houston. But other times, guys just hold out. I mean, last year, the Nets and Durant, they were like, no, man, you're going to stay here. And it wasn't until Kyrie went full Kyrie that they were like, okay, let's start over. We have no way to build a winner around Durant. And so often it becomes the best thing for the team as well, especially if there's a contract situation. But at the end of the day, like, teams making trades, teams not re-signing players, teams doing business is just seen as business. And when players do it, it's like some massive betrayal because most often fans' desires align with the team. And I just think we can be adults enough, and I think this is a more common thing now, that people are adult enough about it to go like, hey, business runs both ways. And if a player wants to do something, if Dame Lillard wants to live in Miami and play with Bam Adebayo, yeah, that makes a hell of a lot of sense. So why are we mad at him about it? If Portland really wanted to build a winner around Dame, they would have acted very differently the last 3 years. So they quiet quit on him. Now he's allowed quitting on them. And the thing is, they're only winning the PR game to the extent that they made him do it. They didn't come out and say, hey, we're going to rebuild. Because we're going to rebuild, we're going to trade Dame. And had they done that, people in Portland would have been super mad. But now they're super mad at, some people are super mad at Dame because they just made him be the one to announce it. And it's silly. And if you're smart, and by the way, if you want to hear more about how they did all this, go back to our interview earlier in the week with Brandon Sprague from 1080 The Fan in Portland. If you're smart, you see right through it, and you're fine with it. If you just fall for the propaganda, if you will, then you're mad at Damian Lillard for doing something that any reasonable human being in his position would do. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We get back. Jorge Sedano joins us from Vegas talking NBA Summer League. the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And coming up at the top of the hour, ESPN's Summer League coverage gets underway. Jorge Sedano is going to be on the call with our buddy Mark Kestisher as well. Great crew calling the early games, and then the Victor Wembanyama debut at 9. And George with us now from Las Vegas. George, welcome to the show, man. Appreciate your time.
Hey, buddy. Good to talk to you again.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, you guys have the 5 and the 7 o'clock game. Wembanyama tips at 9. How do you expect the atmosphere to be kind of early on, Summer League kicking off, and then to build throughout the day with this kind of almost unprecedented debut looming later tonight?
Well, usually those first games, there's a decent crowd on the first day, even if it's like, again, a pair of teams that you don't expect to have any real star power in regards to the young players. So we've got Denver and Milwaukee. That's our first game today. So we'll have a decent crowd, I'm sure. It'll probably be maybe about 40 to 50% capacity. But then by the second game, when you're talking about Scoot Henderson and the Blazers against one of the Thompson twins and the Rockets, and the Rockets have a lot of young players that are going to be playing in Summer League, even some of the guys who played on the big club, I think that will start to pack the place. And you'll start to see almost full capacity and then complete sellout, standing room for most people in there who don't have seats. There's going to be some standing room areas, and it's going to be over 19,000 for Victor Wembanyama, which will be nuts when Mark Jones, Doris Burke, and Cass take the microphones and the headsets from us.
Yeah, I mean, it is, for those that haven't been out there, and I haven't been out there in a long time, like the crowds get pretty rowdy. Like it's a good time. People come out. It's something, especially, when I was out there, it was like 2014, 2015, the Lakers weren't any good. So like Lakers fans were super pumped because it was like, hey, we might win something. And they make the short drive. Do you expect this to be, though, like fans of certain teams? Is it going to be like Spurs fans being like, we got to go see Wembanyama? Like what kind of, obviously it's going to be a full crowd, but what kind of crowd and what kind of energy amongst NBA people are you already experiencing out there?
Well, I think the energy in this place is always great in general, because to your point, I think that fans, based on the expectations of their teams, will show up in droves based on, well, hey, we've got this young star I want to see, so I'm going to make the trek out to Las Vegas. Honestly, of all the stuff on the NBA calendar, this to me is one of the most fun and unique events, because it's really the only event where everyone, and I mean everyone in regards to the team representation, right? The front offices are all here. It's easy to just run into players, and they have scheduled events with fans, with players in the arena, to have autograph sessions and things of that nature. It really is as big a fan fest beyond the games as anything. So it's, to me, the most fun thing that the NBA does on their calendar each and every year. But to answer your question specifically, the Laker fans are always going to be here because it's a quick trek and there's so many of them.
Right.
The Warriors fans have been good in regards to getting here. Last year we had a ton of Knicks fans here. And I remember because I called the game on play-by-play where Richard Jefferson, our guy, was a referee for a quarter. Yeah. So there's always some sort of fun event going on, but there's always a good subset of fans of different teams kind of showing up, particularly based on who their stars are going to be here while they're playing. So I'm guessing a lot of Rockets fans. There'll be a decent amount of Blazers fans, and certainly Lakers, Warriors. But San Antonio, I would imagine, will be well represented for sure at Summer League.
George Sedano, ESPN, will be on the sidelines on the call today for the first 2 games of ESPN Summer League coverage from Las Vegas. And George, I 100% agree with you. It is such a cool event, but it's such a trick. And I was out in Vegas actually last week. How did we convince everyone to go to Vegas in July? What are we doing? Why can't we got to can we do it Toronto in July?
Yeah, I don't think you'll get people going to Toronto in July.
But then you won't melt.
I mean, yeah, no, I get it. But I just think it's easy because the NBA calendar has, especially going back to the days of the Redeem team, right, in 2008,
right,
they meet here in the summer to get ready. For example, the World Cup of basketball is this year. And this is where it all happens in regards to training, exhibition games, and things of that nature. So the NBA has kind of made Vegas its second hub in a lot of ways, right? Even indirectly in a lot of cases. So that's just how it ended up working out. And Warren Legary, who put this all together, Warren Legary, for those that don't know that name, he's like one of the super agents for coaches. And he's a Vegas guy, and he set this thing up many, many years ago. And a lot of the Team USA stuff he set up. So I think that's just kind of how it all worked itself out. It started with the Team USA stuff, and then really it took Summer League to a completely different level after that.
Yeah, no doubt. And this year, it will not only USA Basketball, not only Summer League, WNBA All-Stars next week. So compounding out there.
Next
so
weekend.
Entire basketball world in Vegas, and yet I was there last week, so what was I doing? George Sedano with us from ESPN here on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Don't forget, you can also watch us streaming live on YouTube as well at the Team 980. Real quick before we get back to what you'll see tonight on the floor, I'd be remiss to not ask you about what you thought of what the Wizards did this offseason. Obviously, you have the massive deals to send out Beal and Porzingis, but also, George, they draft one of the most intriguing guys in the entire draft, and one of the most intriguing guys, I think, for a lot of folks at Summer League in Bilal Coulibaly. What have you made of kind of step one of the Wizards rebuild post-Beal era here?
Well, I like the fact that Michael Winger just came in there and basically stripped it all down, right? Because that's what you have to do if you're going to do this thing. And you have to accumulate picks. And I know people are saying, well, we don't know what some of those future picks are going to be. And I would say you would say that almost basically in any sport. You're just buying lottery tickets and trying to see if you can find some winners in those lottery tickets. So I like that. They needed to peel the Band-Aid off with the Bradley Beal stuff. And Porzingis, to me, was always just kind of a placeholder. I don't love him as a player. I think he obviously still has a unique skill set, but I don't even know why Boston brought him in. Like, I just don't like what Boston's doing, period. But back to the Wizards, yeah, I just think that you got to start from the ground up. So Coulibaly, to me, interesting prospect. Don't know a ton about him, but the people that I know that know way more about the international players than I do, they like his skill set. They like him as a prospect, and they think he can build into being a real contributor on a winning type of team because of the skill set. But that's all I know about him. But just the overall premise of tearing it all down and rebuilding it, to me, needed to be done probably shortly after John Wall's departure, if we're being honest.
Sure.
And the fact that they finally got around to it is good. And Michael Winger, people don't realize, well, the Clippers, right, they went out and got Kawhi and Paul George and all these veterans, and they make all these deals. And, yeah, he's been part of that. But people don't realize that 2 seasons ago, when the Clippers lost Paul George and Kawhi for the entire season, basically, they were still a 42-40 team with a bunch of young guys that Michael Winger mostly drafted or found, right, in the undrafted bin, let's call it.
Right.
And so he's certainly capable of building a team from the ground up with young players and then trying to decipher which one of these young players are building blocks and pillars of a potential organization and franchise, et cetera. But he's going to have a couple of years where that's going to take place. And, the Kuzma signing is fine. The Jordan Poole trade is fine. You need guys that are going to be veterans, and they're still young in a lot of ways, obviously, those two. And you need guys to put the ball in the basket, too. So there's a salary floor. There's all that stuff. So they had to make decisions on who they thought they were going to bring in. And I think that the team's not going to be very good this year, but I do think that the future looks better now because at least there's a consistent message and a path to where they want to get.
So for those that don't know, in my audience, George, on top of his national work with ESPN, hosts on 710 ESPN LA, which, by the way, when you're out, a lot of times Clinton Yates, of course, in for you, who joins us at the top of the hour. I didn't realize that I did that today, but here we are. But did you get to know, being that you're based out there and have such strong NBA ties, did you know Winger at all? And what can you tell us about Winger that we might not already know?
Not a ton. Lawrence Frank is kind of the face of the front office there in LA with the Clippers. So dealt way more with Lawrence Frank. I mean, just a quick, acknowledgement of Michael Winger at times. But I did talk to enough people there regularly to know what everybody's job description was there. And he was very much the guy that helped them in his role to find those young talent, right? And also an incredible capologist. Right. I think that's something that is on his resume that he understands the cap in a way that very few in the league, I think, understand it, which in today's NBA, you have to be able to do. There are a couple of guys that these names may not resonate with your fans that are in that category. Andy Ellisberg, the Miami Heat, is kind of one of those guys.
Yes.
So I think that he's one of the guys that most teams look at and say he's the premier guy when it comes to kind of the machinations of the cap. And Winger, much younger than Andy, is in that class with Ellisberg. So I think you got a guy that understands talent, understands the big picture, and understands the salary cap, and is one of the best at that part of it. So that's the type of guy you got in Washington now.
No doubt. All right, last thing real quick. George Sedano with us on the way out. You got Nuggets, Bucks, and then you got Blazers, Rockets tonight. Outside of Scoot Henderson, what are you most excited about?
Yeah, I want to see the obviously the Thompson twins, right? I want to see them play while they're here because while I've done a lot of G League games over my career, and I saw Scoot play a couple of times this year, both in person and on television, I didn't really see much of the Thompson twins in Overtime Elite other than watching them on YouTube occasionally. So now my colleague Israel Gutierrez at ESPN and my colleague Mark Spears at ESPN have done a lot of reporting on those two young men, and they come back with rave reviews about those two guys. But I've yet to see them play live, so I want to see those guys play. And ultimately, I want to see, and this is just kind of an overarching thing at Summer League, the second-year guys that come back.
Right.
They're, to me, if you're a second-year guy coming back to Summer League and you're not basically dominating and putting up big numbers, I think that's a red flag historically. So I'd like to see what those second-year guys that come here do on each particular team. So that's always something I keep an eye out for.
For sure. We're on big-time Johnny Davis watch on that front here in Washington. George Sedano, 5 o'clock Eastern, the coverage begins. Mark Kessinger, Seth Greenberg in the booth as well. George, always great to chat, man. I don't know why we haven't had you on the show before. That is a huge error by me, but we're happy to have you again if you're willing to come back.
Craig, anytime, buddy. Good to talk to you again.
You as well. Thanks, man. George Sedano, everybody, with us here on the Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Coming up at the top of the hour, our guy Neil Dalal joins us live from Vegas. Of course, the Wizards get going. I think tomorrow is their first game, but you got the pool trade being official. You got Bilal Coulibaly. You got Johnny Davis. Lots to watch for Wizards Summer Leagues. Neil's been at all the media avails and everything, so we will talk to Neil coming up at the top of the hour. Always great to have him on the show. Every once in a while, I wind up having to talk about something that happened to me while biking through D.C. And now, Anthony, today is one of those times. Anthony, I have a question for you and for Chris sitting there. Chris, I don't know if you're ever a biker, or just more of a driver or pedestrian in D.C. Yes, on the bike. You're a guy who bikes around D.C. too. Okay. But when you're a pedestrian, do you ever walk across the street without looking?
Of course.
You walk across the street without looking to check if there's cars coming?
I'm joking, Craig.
I was about to say, oh, God. Chris, you better learn fast. I might need a new producer any day now.
Both ways. You learned that when you're like 7, 8 years old. Look both ways.
If you learn that at 7 or 8, you're late.
All right.
Learn that as soon as you can walk.
You think that's late?
You hold your parent's hand, look both ways, walk across the street.
All right. I might have been exaggerating. All right.
Yeah. I don't know how long it took for you to walk, but it wasn't 7 or 8. Anthony's learning how to cross the street in the 2nd grade.
Yes, sir.
Oh, my God. Hey,
Funny story. I actually used to be one of the little corner boys that used to help patrol students to and from school.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So you're lots of experience looking
Yes.
both ways. So here's my question, because I put up a poll on Twitter that was a little bit of bait for people, and actually I'm going to pull this up to have the results as of whatever the latest is. But I asked that question. I said, residents of DC and or other big metropolitan cities, do you look like, I said, do you cross the street without looking? Somehow 9% of the people said yes. I think they were just being trolls. But 91% said no. No, of course I look when I cross the street. So why do so many people walk across bike lanes without looking? It blows my mind. Oh, there's this thing where a vehicle could come by. It might not be motorized, but a thing that could run me over goes in this area. I'm just going to step out here and hope for the best. I kid you not, this morning, biking home from training, within 30 seconds, I had 2 different people just walk out in the middle of the bike lane. And sometimes it's on one of the closed bike lanes where there's parallel parking, and sometimes people just get out of their car without looking. And it's like, oh, I'm just going to stand here next to my car. Would you do that in the middle of the street? No. So don't do it in the bike lane. Would you step out off the curb, submit to walk across the street? No. Why? Because you could get run over. So don't do it in a bike lane. And by the way, if you get hit by a car, a person in the car is probably going to be fine. You do that on a bike and both of us go down. So it just I beg and plead for the safety of all people and the sanity of me. Please start looking where you're going if you're walking a place where some kind of metal object on wheels could hit you. That is my beg and plea. I rest my case, Your Honor.
Can I ask you one question, Craig?
Yes.
How new is this bike lane?
Not new.
Oh, it's old. Okay.
Years old.
Oh, years old.
Years.
Good gracious.
Like as long as I've been in D.C.
Oh, well, yeah, that's a little problematic then.
I mean, even so, though, like,
but I feel
it's a bike lane. It's pretty easy to see. There's a space between you and the street. On the sidewalk in the street, there's like this, I don't know, magical 7-foot space, 8-foot space, whatever it is. You're not just going to be like, oh, let's go check it out.
Yeah, but for people like me, I used to live in D.C. I came back to D.C., and I see all these new bike lanes. I haven't had the chance to walk past those bike lanes. But in the event that I do have to do that, and it's my first time walking past one of these bike lanes that wasn't here when I used to live here, I might not look both ways. Just saying,
Anthony,
because it's the first time. It's
Anthony,
the first time.
When you step off the curb to cross the street,
Yes.
Do you take your first couple steps without looking? Or do you
Nah, I'm
stay
going-
on the curb to make sure that it's safe?
But if you're moving really fast, you might catch me by surprise because I'm going to look left first, and then I'll probably look right, and you might catch me by surprise because of how fast you may be moving.
Sure.
But it won't happen to me another time, like the time.
But are you just going to walk up the bike lane
No,
without looking? Because that
No,
was
no,
the thing
no.
that killed me today.
that's ridiculous.
It wasn't just like, oh, like, because there are times that, like, you know, if you look and there's nobody on the street, and maybe you cross the street kind of diagonally. It's not, you don't necessarily use the crosswalk. You cross diagonally. You might take some time in the street, but it's because you've looked and made sure that's a safe thing to do. So why do people without looking walk up the bike lane? What are you doing? And I was literally like, had that happen to me, and then I get to the next intersection 20 seconds later, if that, and another guy just, without looking, steps off the curb right in the middle of the bike lane. And I just go, buddy. And he's like, oh, sorry. Thankfully, I was already going slow at that point because the lady had already slowed me up by walking in the bike lane 20 feet for no reason. Like, what are you doing? Like, didn't even look behind to think, there's this space where it's not cars. It's not pavement that I'm supposed to be walking on. I wonder what could go here. I don't know. Something that could also run you over?
a bike.
A bike. We're trying to be good for the environment and also not have to deal with parking. That's really why I bike places. It's actually faster most of DC, and by the time I go door to door and don't have to worry about parking, it's way better. Although biking in this swamp of July, man, it's rough.
It's so hot out, man. It was
I
like
literally-
80 degrees, but it
Yeah.
felt like 180 degrees.
Yeah,
It is
I might be
bad.
driving to work more because I don't want to walk to the metro because by the time we leave, it's 90 degrees in the afternoon.
And you're
And if
drained.
I can go from my garage, my air conditioned apartment, to my garage, to the garage at work, to the air conditioned studios at work, and not have to go outside.
That's smart.
And that might be worth the $18 it costs for us to park at our place.
I hate that for you.
Yeah. Yeah. But we'll see. Or perhaps I'll be more cost efficient. Suck it up on the metro. But yeah, man. It's July heat. It's I don't know what's worse. The dry heat of Vegas or this nastiness. It's both terrible. When it's 112 in Vegas or 97 here, like what the hell's the difference? Sweaty. It's gross.
Yeah.
I don't know. We can ask Neil. He's in Vegas. He's currently experiencing the dry heat and also the rest of Summer League. By the way, the air conditioning in the Thomas and Mack Center in Las Vegas, where Summer League is, that is a good air conditioner. We'll talk to Neil DeLaw from Hoop District next. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. Hour 2, Hoffman Show, Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Top of the 6 o'clock hour, Logan Paulson and I rank the top defensive coordinators in the NFC East. Take Command Friday. Clinton Yates joins us at the bottom of the hour from MLB All-Star Weekend. But Summer League kicking off tonight in Las Vegas. Let's go live for Not My Beat.
Today's top story.
Neil Dalal of Hoop District is with us. Neil, how are you, sir? Are you staying indoors and properly air-conditioned?
Yeah, so getting into Vegas tomorrow.
Okay.
Enjoying a little bit of time in San Diego right now. But, yeah, definitely will be staying out of that heat.
Yeah, I'd say, what's the weather like in San Diego? It's like always perfect there.
Yeah, beautiful. 73, sunny, not a cloud in the sky.
Oh, I might just hang up on you. I'm so jealous. I went from Vegas myself last week where it was 112 when we left back into this swamp. So you are living, sir. Excellent work out of you. As for the Wizards, though, in Las Vegas, for you, what's the number one most important thing? Is it Koulibaly? Is it Davis in year 2? Is it something else?
Yeah, so certainly I would say, Johnny Davis, that year 2 jump for him is what, I'm really interested in seeing. Obviously, last year was a tough rookie season for him. He, had his first kid, right in the middle of training camp. That's difficult for any NBA rookie, let alone now you're getting sleep deprived and things like that. But year 2 should be, exciting for him because he knows that he made a big jump from his freshman to sophomore year at Wisconsin. He's going to be poised and want to do the exact same thing in the NBA. Guy, I'm sure he's very cognizant of, Wizards Twitter and, all of the flack that he was receiving as a number 10 pick. So I definitely want to see him, more composed and, taking charge in year 2, starting with, Summer League and their first game tomorrow on Saturday.
From teammates, coaches, front office folks, anyone that has talked about Davis over the last month since the big change, and obviously some of the media availability around Summer League and practice, what is everyone in the organization saying about Davis, and what's Johnny saying about himself?
Yeah, so he obviously, took it upon himself to, stay, for the most part around the D.C. area, took some time to go back to Wisconsin, which is home for him. But for the most part, he's been in the facility, more times than not in these, last almost 3 months since the season ended. That's a welcome sign, to any organization when your young players are taking the initiative to work on things. His shot is obviously something that he wanted to work on and that he wanted to put a lot of time into. And he feels like, he was able to improve that. He said that he wants to tighten up some of his ball handling. And so, that certainly will be something that we'll see more of in Summer League, in a lot of ball handling situations that weren't necessarily his forte. And, people somewhat criticized that decision, but, we'll see in year 2, and especially, when he has somebody of the caliber of Bilal Koulibaly next to him, who's also capable of handling the ball, that's able to ease some of the pressure and angst off of him.
Yeah, definitely. Neil Dalal with us, Hoop District, here on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Before we get to Koulibaly, where are we at with the staff on the Wizards? They obviously lost Pat Delaney, left to become an assistant elsewhere. Alex McLean was let go even before the larger transition. But there's this desire, certainly for Michael Winger and that level, Dawkins as well, but even from Winger's level at the highest point in the organization, to build out the staff, to change the way they do player development, to change the way they do medical, to change everything to build a more modern, sustainable NBA franchise. Where are we at with the staffing for the Wizards going into the summer?
Yeah, certainly something that, I had asked Wes Until Jr. about shortly after the introductory press conference for Michael Winger and Will Dawkins, a few weeks ago. Obviously they've not formally announced anything. They did hire one person in, a kind of sports statistician role taking over for Dean Oliver. But like you said, they had, multiple people lead the organization. Pat Delaney, the lead assistant, Alex McLean, the, director of player development, even Ryan Richmond, taking a job overseas in Japan. So there are definitely some vacancies open. I think a couple days ago, Chris Mannix with Sports Illustrated noted that, hey, Jeff Van Gundy, who was just released as part of the ESPN layoffs that happened recently, could be interested in, getting back into the coaching world. Our friend Ben Sandig noted that, John Thompson III, who, was essentially retained in, an even more greater role in Monumental Basketball, has a connection from him from back in 2019. So to me, that would be, an absolutely outstanding get if you could get somebody of his caliber, his experience to, kind of just shepherd Wes Unseld into, the dynamic world that is, NBA coaching.
Yeah, that would be incredible. Man, to think that Jeff Van Gundy, after all these years, would come back and just be an assistant is kind of nuts. But, I mean, he's a basketball junkie. He's going to want to be in it somewhere, whether it's continuing his role with USA Basketball. And, I think he was with the U19s. I can't remember what he was coaching some of the younger guys and then helping with the senior team, or whether it's back in the NBA. We'll see. All right, to Coulibaly. What is a successful summer league for Bilal Coulibaly?
Yeah, I don't like to put a ton of stock into summer league. You have one extreme of, say the Glenn Rice Juniors who really tear it up and then, not necessarily able to translate that, once they're going against, the real top talent. Then you have the other extreme where, you can have a so-so showing like Johnny did last season. But I think for Coulibaly, what you want to see is, he's going to be given the task of, potentially guarding, the other team's best players. He's 6'8", very long. His calling card is defense. And, Johnny Davis said it himself during a practice earlier this week that, hey, it's hard to go by this guy, even though he's, not even going to turn 19 until later this month. So I think that's something immediately that you want to be able to see translate. But certainly, they're going to put the ball in his hands more. He's a very eager guy to try and show off what he's capable on that end of the floor as an offensive player. Obviously, with Metro 92, he wasn't really asked to be in that facilitating role. That's a, very real professional league. They're competing for championships over there. It's tough to try and throw a developing 18-year-old into the fire there. But that's exactly what Summer League is for here. Experiment with things. He's going to have a, pretty talented group of players around him. And, the Wizards fully see him as a guard, maybe not necessarily a, pure point guard, but, maybe kind of that combo guard. And it'll be interesting to see what he's able to do. I think you're going to find some guy that, can just really fill the stat sheet. Rebounds, assists, blocks, steals. He's going to really put all of that stuff together. The shooting is obviously, the one glaring point, but I think you'll be able to find him contribute in a lot of different ways besides just putting the ball in the hoop.
Agreed. Neil Dalal, Hoop District. And I agree with what you said, too, that, you can't put too much stock into this. Of course, you get a first look and you can see some of the raw athleticism. But to me, it's actually, I don't know, Neil, I'm curious if you agree with this. To me, it's a bigger deal for the second-year guys. If you don't show up and play really well, that's more of a significant, tells me something substantial than a rookie who hasn't even ever been through a real NBA practice, nevertheless sniffed an NBA game.
Absolutely, right? So Johnny has been through, a full year of being around an NBA organization, has played a lot of games, in the G League, is familiar with the system, whereas a guy like Bilal has literally been drafted, less than 3 weeks ago, and, is really kind of just someone going in cold turkey. They have their own little rookie mini camp and things like that, but there's only so much that you can, get to, stick on the wall in that short amount of time. So certainly, yeah, second-year players, Johnny Davis, Quinn Jackson, and then obviously you guys, some new guys coming in, and we'll see how much they really know the playbook and things like that in Ryan Rollins and Patrick Baldwin Jr., part of the Jordan Poole trade.
So that's actually what I was going to ask about next. Is there any of the other guys, the non-Coulibaly, non-Davis group, that you are super intrigued by, whether it's Ryan Rollins, Patrick Baldwin, a guy like Xavier Cooks, who they bring in at the end of last year, who is one of the best players in the Australian League, who is not like a big scorer or anything, but kind of like a Draymond Green-esque, does everything else well kind of player. At least that's what he was in Australia. Doing that in the NBA is a completely different beast. But is there any of those guys that is particularly intriguing to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Also throw in, second-round pick Tristan Vucevic, I believe I'm saying that properly. He's a guy who's hungry to try and come in and show that, he has, an NBA skill level game as well. Obviously people are not going to be as familiar with his game as an international player, but, he is very eager also to, get onto the semi-national spotlight right now in Vegas and, show people that, he has a Kristaps Porzingis-esque type game to him, very big, very built out already, I would say. Pretty much has an NBA body at 7 foot, 225 pounds, much more than, say, Kristaps had, in his early years in the league. So excited to see, the kind of range that he has for his game. And then certainly, I'm not going to put a whole lot of stock into Patrick Baldwin Jr. and Ryan Rollins, performances. I'm hoping that they'll at least get some run, get their legs underneath them, hang out with the guys and things like that. But, presuming that, there's no, it would probably be considered tampering. Otherwise, the Wizards couldn't really talk to them, until that trade went official yesterday afternoon. So it's going to be tough for them. But certainly I think, Tristan is going to be an interesting thing because in theory, the Wizards have not yet made a decision of whether they will buy him out of his contract for $850K to come and join the team this season. They're a little bit tight on roster spots as well. So, it's still up in the air whether he might, play another year out in Europe before coming over to the Wizards full time.
Yeah, it's great info. All right, last thing for you on the way out here is Neil Dalal, of course, writer for the Hoop District, is with us here on the Hoffman Show. We might hear this weekend. I heard that there probably, at least were initial plans for a Kyle Kuzma press avail. And then I'm assuming Jordan Pools will be not long after that. Of course, Kuzma, there's nothing official that's been announced because they haven't actually officially announced his deal yet. Or re-signing always going to be the last thing that gets announced because of the way the transactions get ordered. But Poole gets announced, and presumably we'll hear from him soon. Anything you would like to hear, anything that you're curious to ask either Jordan Poole or Kyle Kuzma when you get the chance?
Yeah, I think obviously the thing that comes to mind is, timeline for the Wizards. This season, I'm not going to say it's going to be a wash, but they're not going to be contending for even the playoffs this season. I think, they're going to be right 27-1. Certainly, Michael Winger is not somebody who is wanting to, tank and things like that. They're going to want to be competitive, game in and game out. But certainly it's going to be interesting. Jordan Poole, Kyle Kuzma, you guys are established guys on this team. What kind of leadership role are you guys looking to take? How do you think that, your personality in and of itself will be in that sense? Kuzma talked about it a lot, that, playing under LeBron. LeBron is a guy that makes everybody 1 through 15 better on his team. That's something Kuzma wants to do. And I'm sure that attracted Winger and Dawkins to re-signing him, even though they're going to be on a, young team that's developing. So I think something along those lines of, hey, you guys are probably going to get your shots and do your thing offensively, but how are you going to try and help this organization for years to come, even beyond possibly when you guys might no longer be here if, the younger crew takes over, and how can you, really form those years 1 and year 2 for a lot of these young guys, for it to be felt for years to come in their career.
No doubt. Neil Dalal on his way to Vegas for NBA Summer League. Enjoy your last little slice of paradise in San Diego, and we'll talk to you soon, my friend. All right, that's Neil Dalal. I guess Neil's phone finally went out on us, or Anthony hung up on him, one or the other. Anthony, was that you?
It was not me. I wasn't sure what was going on. In between, your question and his answer, I was fading him down because it was a little loud in the background, but yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well,
that was not me, though.
I appreciate Neil's phone and whatever carrier he has for hanging on to the dear end, although it did not allow him to say a proper goodbye. Heartbroken. All right, when we get back here on the Hoffman Show, how much are we looking forward to NBA Summer League? And also a list of Summer League do's and don'ts. That is next on the Team 980. Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Clinton Yates joins us bottom of the hour from Seattle, MLB All-Star Weekend. And rumor has it, he's got binoculars. So there's no telling what he'll see. There's no telling what he'll do. Clinton Yates with us coming up at 5:30. Tonight, though, NBA Summer League. Pretty pumped about that. You got 4 games tonight, including the Victor Wembanyama debut, which, by the way, is against Scoot Henderson. Haney, are you excited / will you be watching some or all of the Summer League action tonight?
I will be watching some of it. As soon as work ends here today, I'll be heading to watch the Mystics take on the Fever. Yes.
Right.
I'll be heading there. And then I should get home. Should be about the second quarter by the time I get home. So I'll probably watch the rest of the game. I'm excited to see what Wemby does. Definitely excited to see Scoot lead the young guys over in Portland. I'm expecting some high scoring, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it. So tonight, you actually, I think, have some matchups. Yeah, you have some matchups going on right now. New Orleans and Minnesota's on right now because you got the double wide right now. You got the what's going on in what's it called? Oh, it's Thomas and Mack Center, and I think Cox Pavilion. I don't know if the cable company that sponsors it has changed, but like they got 2. New Orleans, Minnesota is happening right now. Denver, Milwaukee is right now. Then you got Chicago, Toronto, and then Portland, Houston. So you get one of the Thompson twins. You get Scoot. That should be fun. Charlotte, San Antonio is at 9. That's the ESPN as well. Cleveland, Brooklyn tonight as well. Sacramento, Atlanta. And then the nightcap is Golden State at L.A. If you were in Vegas, that's the game you'd want to go to because, I mean, obviously you want to go to the Spurs-Hornets game because of the players, but the crowd for Golden State LA is going to be nuts. You haven't been out there for Summer League, right?
Nah, not for Summer League. Not yet, anyway. I need to make it out there.
It's incredible. We need to consider taking the show there next year.
Okay.
It's something I thought about in the middle of the year, and then just it never. The way the scheduling worked out, I don't know. Next year is going to be tough because convincing both my boss and my wife to fly to Las Vegas in mid-July, and then, I mean, if we did, the boss would be easier because I would do the show from there.
Yeah.
So it's not like I'm really taking time off. And we get some pretty great stuff. But if the wife is going to come on the trip, which would probably happen because we'd probably go see Alicia again. By the way, I will also be taking in W action tonight before I take in the Summer League. The Aces game is tonight, or they play the Wings tonight. Great game earlier in the week. Big Aces comeback. So you got Aces tonight. You got Mystics tonight. You got all the Summer League action tonight. And then we fly all the way back to D.C., and then weeks later we leave for Paris for the Olympics because we're doing that next year. That's a tough sell.
That's a lot of traveling right there, man.
Yeah, it's a lot of airline miles. A lot of airline miles. And I don't mean that as like, oh, yeah, we got our rewards. It's like, no, that's a lot of miles on an airplane. It's a lot of time. Be a lot of shows to download, a lot of movies to watch.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's going to happen. But we'll see. We'll see. Summer League is sweet because the thing is tonight, like, I would expect like LeBron. Well, LeBron's down at Peach Jam, I guess.
Yeah, he is.
He's down at Peach Jam.
And they won earlier today as well.
So he's still there. He could get on his PJ and, you know, get from Atlanta to Vegas. But I would assume there is going to be like AD is probably going to be there tonight. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of the guys go to Summer League and hang out, and you're just, especially if you have a media credential, like you're just brushing shoulders. Well, you're brushing your shoulders against their ribs because they're all 7 feet tall. But you're brushing shoulders with league personnel, with players. Everyone's just kind of walking around the bowl of the arena. It's crazy. Every NBA media person is there. It's a great atmosphere. And for a game like Wembanyama, and especially because this might be the only game he plays, it's going to be a madhouse. It's going to be crazy tonight. Like sold out 100%. And then the atmosphere will be crazy for Warriors-Lakers as well. Like it's going to be a fun night to be at those games. out there. And it's going to be a fun night to watch him on TV.
You think this is the only game he plays in?
At most, it's one of two. Why would you play him more?
Yeah, I mean, that's
Like
fair.
he's awesome. What does he need to learn? I mean, he's already played it in a league. I'm trying to think. I don't know enough about the league he was in. It was a pretty high-level league.
Mhm.
Like, is the league he played in France better than NBA Summer League? I think you could probably make an argument, yeah. Like, not all the dudes that are playing in this league could play in that league.
Yeah.
Now, there's some that are obviously way better. The Thompson twins are way better than, French league players. Scoot is most of the top 10. A lot of the college guys that went in the first round, maybe. But, like, once you get into the second round, like, a lot of those guys will wind up playing in that league. And then you have the guy, there's more undrafted guys than there are actual draft picks that play in Summer League. You have so many guys that don't have it. Like, really, Summer League is a big audition. It's not just, got to get the NBA guys ready. For 80% of the players in Summer League, maybe that's a little high, but maybe not. Let's say 80% of Summer League guys, like, you're auditioning to make a G League team, to make a European League team. Like, you are hoping to be on Mets 92. So if you're Victor and you're the Spurs, how much are you actually getting out of Summer League?
Yeah, I think it was just a fan in me, wanting to see him match up against a Chet Holmgren, who's been killing it so far this summer, or like a Kenny Lofton to get some payback from when they matched up. I don't know. That's just a fan in me. I want to see, more of Wemby, but it is a business at the end of the day, and they don't need to have him out there when he already has the experience and things of that
Right.
nature.
I mean, you see what happened to Chet in Summer League last year. Got hurt, missed the whole year. Not good. So here's your Summer League do's and don'ts as a fan, right? Fan's guide to Summer League. Do enjoy it. This is the last little tidbit. We all had the great NBA Finals, and you're just like, I need a little bit more. This is your little bit of drip of NBA basketball that keeps you sustained until training camp opens in September, and then ultimately, obviously, we don't really get to see anything until preseason in October. So this is what you got. Obviously, W Hoop is great, and training camp is around the corner for the NFL. And if you're a baseball person, you got Major League Baseball to sustain you through on a sports front. But for specifically NBA basketball, this is what you got. So enjoy it. Do not take much out of it. Do not look at some guy who puts up 18 a game and be like, oh, that guy's going to be a star. No, he's playing against mostly not NBA players. I just told you that. Most of these guys are looking to audition for Europe, and it favors ball handlers. So especially, if you're someone like Xavier Cooks for the Wizards, and you're someone who played in a high-level Australian league or high-ish level Australian league, but you're not a big ball handler, scorer type, yeah, he's probably not going to put up great numbers. That doesn't mean that a more advanced scouting eye can't look at him and be like, he got the work in he needed. Cool. Also, if a guy takes a bunch of shots and scores a bunch of points, that doesn't necessarily mean that he actually had a good summer league, because he could have been making the wrong reads all the time and just scoring because he was selfish with the ball. I do think that it's a much bigger deal, like I said earlier, and George said this and Neil agreed as well. It's a bigger deal for second-year guys. Like, Johnny Davis should come out and look like the best player on the floor. If he doesn't, and it's not Bilal Coulibaly, or he's not on the floor against like Victor, that's a problem. But mostly, you don't take much out of Summer League at all. It didn't last year. It doesn't mean that it's not an indicator. There were issues with Johnny Davis as a rookie, and that started in Summer League. But it doesn't automatically mean that a guy's going to be bad or good. So just enjoy it for what it is, which is a little bit of basketball amongst very high-level players, played in a gym in Las Vegas in front of 20,000 people. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And Clinton Yates joins us for his Friday visit next. The Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And last time we talked to our next guest, I believe he was in the press box in Omaha, Nebraska at the College World Series. Now here we are a couple weeks later, live from the press box in Seattle, Major League Baseball All-Star Weekend. It's Clayton Yates.
T-Mobile Park is where I am right now. I'm currently, for those of you listening on the radio, using my binoculars to look around the field, and I can see Jamie Moyer, who you might remember from...
Is he still pitching?
No, Jamie Moyer is the head coach for the American League team, facing off against LaTroy Hawkins, who's the head coach for the National League team, in the USA Baseball High School All-American game. So they're on the field now. But it's been a fun day so far, and Seattle is kind of building up its vibe. I made a walk down from Pioneer Square to the ballpark today. It's a fun place for baseball, and it's a fun time for the weekend.
How old is Jamie Moyer? This is now my question.
Well,
Actually,
Jamie Moyer wears
I just looked it
number
up.
50. He wears number 50. He's got to be older than 50.
Clinton.
Yes.
Jamie Moyer is 60.
Well,
Which kind of
he
tracks.
pitched in the bigs for a long time, right?
I was going to say, he pitched till he was 104. So the fact that he's only 60 is kind of a miracle.
Let me say something between you and I. He definitely looks like he's 60. So there's that. You know what I mean? But he's a good guy. He gets around the game a little bit. So he's just a little bit of a gray beard now versus what he was in the bigs, which was also a gray beard. But crafty lefties hang around. So we love Jamie Moyer.
Yeah, the definition of crafty lefty.
Yes.
Jamie Moyer.
For sure.
So any of the players on the field in this high school all-star game that we're looking forward to hearing their names called, potentially getting drafted here shortly?
You know, I was thinking about that, and I was going to have a whole list of names, and I don't necessarily know that I do, to be honest. There's so many things happening here this weekend, but I do recommend that you guys watch tonight the HBCU Swingman Classic. It is the all-star game between HBCU teams, sort of divvied up between kind of north and south-ish, if you will. And again, it's not really about the names per se in that game as much as it's about the event itself. Ken Griffey Jr.'s idea to put this on under his Swingman imprint for Nike. So for the kids who are about to arrive here in a little bit and to have a luncheon together before they go to BP, it's really an experience unlike anything else. You know, college baseball, as we talked about last week, has its own kind of place, but HBCU baseball in specific is a different sort of brand of operation. Quite frankly, Craig, not everybody who plays HBCU baseball is black. It's just what they play through their educational systems in terms of those institutions. And there's a lot of black kids, obviously, but it's just kind of a different vibe in terms of what the energy is brought to the table. So I'm really excited to see that game tonight. And there should be some names that I think you guys will probably see at some point down the line, but these are not super duper pro draftee situations right now. It's just kind of a fun reason to gather.
Yeah, Clint Yates with us from Seattle, MLB All-Star Weekend kicking off. It's always a weird All-Star Weekend, by the way. It's like All-Star Weekend. By the way, they're still playing regular season games, and the All-Star game's on Tuesday or Wednesday, whatever the hell it is.
The timing is awkward, for sure. It's Tuesday,
right? And then Monday's Home Run Derby.
Monday's Home Run Derby.
Yeah, All-Star Weekend. It's a summer weekend. It ends on Wednesday. What are we going to do? What is your favorite event of All-Star Weekend? Because you got the Futures game, you got the Derby, you got the game, you got these other events around it that you just talked about. What's your favorite All-Star Weekend event?
You know, a lot of people were asking me about this online because I was doing an AMA, and people said, oh, we should bring this, that, and the third to the All-Star game. And I don't disagree with that. I wouldn't mind seeing an outfield throwing contest. I wouldn't mind seeing some guys go first to third or whatever so you can get around the bags the fastest. But the Home Run Derby, to me, is still the draw. You know, I was there at Nats Park when Bryce, in that headband, won that daggone thing.
I own that headband.
Yes, so do I. People forget that was a top 5 moment in Nats history at the time, and I would argue still is. You know what I'm saying? In terms of what the history of that franchise is. The Home Run Derby has legitimate potential for special moments, and it's fantastic. I was there a couple years ago when Vladdy and Pete Alonso went at it. Vladdy didn't even win that thing, and he hit a bazillion of them. Should be a fun night on Monday because Mookie Betts is in it. For those of you hometown listeners, Adley Rutschman is in it from the O's, and J-Rod from the Mariners, hometown guy, is in it as well. I expect an electric atmosphere, and I like watching balls go out of the yard in that particular scenario. Regular baseball games, I don't care about home runs so much. Derby, I do.
Yeah, Mr. J-Rod, a.k.a. Mr. Jordan Heidema for all the World Cup soccer fans out there.
Well played, sir.
How many power couples over the next 5 years are better than Heidema and J-Rod in all of sports.
I mean, it's tough to beat. And if Dansby Swanson wasn't on the injured list, he'd be there as well.
Say Mal is,
Pugh, you know what I'm saying?
Mal is also on the injured list.
You
So
know what I mean?
that's the all-injured couple right now, unfortunately.
The IL list, but they're a pretty good one too. But it's going to be tough to beat them for sure.
Yeah. All right, Clint Yates with us from Seattle. So we might actually have a pretty significant month here for the Nationals. Barry Svrluga the other day kind of snuck into his reporting about the Nationals and what they might be doing on some of the roster stuff with that this Qatari investment into Monumental Sports could help open up some extra funding for Leonsis to close the deal for the Nationals. What do you make of that? Because that would also, the Qatari investment is the first international sovereign wealth fund to invest in major sports, period. It's in the NBA and the NHL by nature of Monumental. How do you think baseball feels about that being the thing that potentially, along with the settlement of the Masson lawsuit recently, or the resolvement of the Masson lawsuit, gets this thing over the line?
This is actually something that I think is going to turn into a very serious thing in Major League Baseball, because we've seen what we'll just call foreign entities moving their dollars into certain sports, how that's affected things. We can go so far as to even go to soccer on the other side of the pond in England, completely revolutionized the competitive balance in terms of different teams. I personally don't love it for a lot of different reasons, and it's not necessarily just where the money is coming from, and it's not even a personal shot at Theodore. I just don't think the same person owning 4 teams in the same town, that many teams, in the same town, makes sense. For me, that balance does not work very well for me as a fan. And now the specific characters involved, that's one thing. The other ways that this is going to happen, I don't think that MLB is going to be that pressed to get outside money into their system. Now, look, I'm not implying that there's some sort of moral high ground, not by any stretch of the imagination. I just think that with all that's going on with Leonsis and all that's going on with that team, I don't know, man. I don't think they're in some big rush to sell them because, it's not like the team is any good, which is a whole separate discussion with the draft coming up on Sunday, which is actually, sidebar, going to be held at Lumen Field on the football field for those of you NFL fans. That's a whole separate discussion because, quite frankly, if I'm a Nationals fan right now, this team is just not even close. It's not even about competitive. It's about the fact that the draft process has not produced anything for, it seems like, 5 whole seasons. There's a stat that I can't remember off the top of my head, but the number of homers that the guys who have been picked by the Nats is over the last 5 years professionally is drastically lower than every other team, just on a basic power front. They're not that good at the draft process. And so that's my larger concern with the Nationals right now. And I don't even necessarily know that that's a guy like a Rizzo's fault. It's just one of those things where philosophically and foundationally, if you're not good at it, you're not good at it. And so the product on the field is as big a concern as anything with the people upstairs right now for the Washington Nationals.
Well, so how much are those things tied, though? Because how much of this is kind of the R&D of, we don't have the baseball analytics people, we don't have some of the other research and development things that other clubs have, and that the learners are not as willing to spend and invest and be revolutionary in these ways, or even keep up with the Joneses in these ways, because they're also looking to sell the team.
I think it's tied a lot, but I also don't necessarily know that I trust Theodore with that on the other side of it either. It's not like he knows a ton about baseball. It's not like he knows a ton about sports anyway. And he's always been upfront about that. He's a fan who likes to put people in position as best he can in order to make money and make his teams better. Whether or not he can do that with a baseball team is another question. It's just plain not as easy. It's a longer season. Everything takes a longer time to sort of grow out of the ground, and I do think they're related, but I also don't know that just canning Rizzo would be the answer to this. If I'm somebody who's coming in, I would like to have a little continuity between the old squad and the new. I don't know that turning it over immediately is going to be the answer either way. So, it's one of those unfortunate things where you say to yourself, I'm glad 2019 happened, or else this would have been miserable for a decade and a half, make it 2, but it did. So that's kind of where we are.
Yeah, Clint Yates with us from Seattle for a few more minutes. MLB All-Star Weekend. You mentioned the draft coming up on Sunday. You were just obviously out there for the College World Series. I know a couple of those names going to go high, potentially on the Nats' radar. Who do you think they go with?
I think they go with Dylan Cruz. He won the Golden Spikes for LSU, and I mean, if he gets to 2, that for that matter. But he's an all-around player who, when you look at him, you don't necessarily say he's going to do this or he's going to do that. You just know he's going to be on the ball field every day, and that's the best part about him. He reached base every single game this season, including going back into the season before that for LSU. The guy's a gamer. And, see him in Omaha, you know that he's a big-time guy that can get it done, under the bright lights. But, again, the draft is such a crapshoot in any sport, particularly in baseball. And, hopefully they'll get somebody good out of it who can at the very least contribute, because right now that's looking difficult.
Right. So the other big name is Paul Skeens. What do you make of him? Because it's probably those guys going 1-2. Skeens
can throw. I don't love taking pitchers that high. That's a personal situation in terms of my particular style of analysis. But if I'm getting a guy, if there's an option for me to get a guy that can play every day, I'm taking the guy that can play every day. That's pretty much how I break that down. Skeens is a big leaguer, no doubt, but I prefer everyday guys.
All right, and finally,
yes.
the nonsense portion of this here weekly interview. All right, Seattle checklist. Will you go see the Space Needle, or have you seen it before?
I have not gone to see the Space Needle, but I'm going to the market where they throw the fish.
That was going to be my next one. Are you going to Pike's Place?
I don't know that I'm going to throw the fish, but I've been watching a lot of people cut fish. For whatever reason, I've been watching people fillet fish on TikTok, ardently over the past couple weeks.
Have you been doing some more cooking?
I made a fish soup the other day. This is another story. But,
okay.
Yeah, but I made it with whole fish, and I made the stock with the eyeball. It was crazy. Anyway, so I'm going to go to the fish market and see some guys cut some fish.
This is the July content we live for. You want to do a second segment on your fish soup?
We can do that next week, but
okay.
I might have made a second soup by next week as well. So there's that. Yes.
And then finally, the last Seattle thing that there's kind of two more. They're all in that Pike's Place area. Are you going to go to the gum wall?
I don't know what that is.
It's gross. It's just people put their old chewed gum there. It's a thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
not.
I don't know why.
On that.
And then are you going to go get them? I can't remember the name of the place. They don't need extra advertising, but there's a famous mac and cheese joint across the street from the fish market.
Maybe. I'm not huge on mac and cheese. It's a Thanksgiving side to me. It's not like a big part of my...
If you're going to go get one, though, it's pretty good.
I might have to do that. But yeah, Seattle's a cool place. This is a great place for an all-star game. You know what I mean? And
yeah, it's great.
Ken Griffey Jr. being a part of the proceedings and being here has everybody really jazzed up. So, lucky me.
Yeah, I will say the mac and cheese hits a little different when it's 39 degrees and misting, which is 10 months out of the year in Seattle, but you're in one of the two that it's not. So maybe you skip that one and save it for a football trip.
Good point.
All right, we'll talk to you next week about fish soup.
All right, goodbye, Gregory. Have a great week.
Bye. Top of the hour here on the Hoffman Show. We will debate the best defensive coordinators in the NFC East. Spoiler alert, we already debated it. It was myself and Logan Paulson. Take Command Friday. If you want me and Logan talking that, including a guy that he played for in Dan Quinn when Logan was in Atlanta. You definitely want to stay tuned for the top of the hour. So right now, though, I just want to follow up on something that we just talked about with Clinton that I hadn't really thought about yet. And it's super relevant here locally, but it's part of like the larger discussion in sports right now about where the money comes from. And overseas, they're like in European soccer specifically, clubs like Paris Saint-Germain and Newcastle are straight up owned by Middle Eastern sovereign foreign wealth funds, countries that made a lot of money on oil, which inherently isn't necessarily bad. But these are countries that also have questionable at best, if not unquestionably bad human rights records and a whole other host of complicated, thorny issues that get into geopolitics. But even up from a sporting side, putting all that aside, they have basically unlimited funds. And it's different than, in terms of a business model and how you put together a team, than anything we've ever seen in the history of sports before. Never before, even in uncapped leagues, have we seen teams that just have unlimited resources. And when you think about how that could ultimately affect sports in America, baseball is in a different category than every other sport. I don't know why I hadn't thought of this, but it's such a great point by Clinton. And it's one that I don't think baseball is going to get in the way of. And I'm sure that they have ways to mitigate. However, now that the Qatari Wealth Fund, the Qatari Investment Fund, owns 5% of of Monumental Sports, and we know that Ted Leonsis is the favorite to buy the Nationals, and we've had multiple people say that that is very likely to eventually happen, and there's just been some loose ends that had to be tied up so that they could agree on a price and what the team is actually worth. But when we had Chelsea Janes on 2 weeks ago, I think it was, when the Masson case finally got resolved, I said, who owns the Nationals in a year? I'm not going to hold you to it, so I don't want to put too much on Chelsea's answer. But I said, like, who do you think owns the Nationals in a year, in 2 years? And she said, I think it's Ted Leonsis. And so if Leonsis owns the team, one, Clinton made a good point about how that stretches him thin. Now he's funding not one, not two, not three, but at least 4 teams, and it depends on where you want to draw the line of a sports team, right? Because all owners have other businesses many owners have other businesses that they're also putting funding into. Few are as expensive as other professional sports teams. The WNBA is expensive in the nature of a business. To supply any sports outfit is expensive, but it is nowhere on par with the money spent, in part because the salaries are so absurdly low in that league. And, you also have only 10 players on a roster, et cetera, compared to the hundreds of millions of dollars in salaries that you dole out in Major League Baseball, in the National Hockey League, and in the NBA. But on the NBA and NHL side, there's salary caps. So a team coming in, or a foreign investment fund, a sovereign wealth fund, or even an endowment, right? That's something we talked about with Edmund Novy Williams, coming in and having a passive stake in the team where they just provide some money but have no say. Okay, whatever, you're limited by the salary cap. There's only so much money they can give. However, in an uncapped league like baseball, and look, these things are also, let's be more nuanced because that makes for great radio, right? But they're more convoluted because, what if the Qatari Wealth Fund is like, hey, go get, Greg Popovich for $50 million a year, we'll pay the salary. Like, okay, well, now that's a different story. I don't know how legal that is because they only own a certain percent. Does their spending have to be in line with what percent they own the team? Like, there's potentially complications there. But in baseball, those are far less complicated, right? It's uncapped. So if people want to spend, they can spend. And so I do wonder the complications of essentially an endless pit of money coming into Major League Baseball and how that could change the very nature of the sport. Because we've seen even with like the Mets and Steve Cohen, he spent, some would say recklessly, record amounts of money. But even he now is like, look, this has limits. Like, this isn't going to happen forever. We needed some juice. Also, the fact that he's not winning probably has something to do with it. But the Yankees, obviously the Dodgers, like, they're basically endless pits of money because they generate so much revenue and their owners are so rich. But to have a truly, on a sovereign wealth fund level, endless pit of money in a league with no salary cap, I would be pretty fascinated to talk to Rob Manfred and be like, how do you make sure this doesn't become what it's been in European soccer, where, like, all of a sudden, and maybe it just does, maybe the sports are too different that it doesn't matter, but, like, Newcastle United is in Champions League now because they could spend like they couldn't spend before. Other team, Paris Saint-Germain has won the French league God knows how many years in a row because they just outspend everybody. So how does that work if teams are willing to spend? Now, the Angels are spending a lot of money and have two of the best players in baseball, if not the two best, in Ohtani and Trout, and they stink. So baseball is also harder and more complicated. There's a scouting element and a team-building element that's no one's really ever cracked to a massive extent. But the Yankees, the team that's the richest, and the Dodgers, they've been pretty good since they spent money like they do. So could a team definitely buy its way into it? I think so. It's something to consider as we follow Leonsis' purchase of the Nationals and how that 5% that the Qatari Wealth Fund owns of Monumental Sports could ultimately play into it. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Who is the best defensive coordinator in the NFC East? And by the way, who's the worst? Logan and I debate on Take Command next. Friday, final hour. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube, youtube.com/@theteam980. YouTube.com/@1067 The Fan, where you can find full episodes of Take Command, myself and Logan Paulson. We always try to play a little bit for you here on the radio during the week as well. And on the latest edition of the show, we did our coach rankings. Ironically, if you haven't heard yet, we didn't rank head coaches. We actually explained why in the episode, so you can listen to that wherever you get your podcast, or again, watch the full episode at youtube.com/@1067 The Fan. But right now, I want to play our defensive coordinator rankings for you. Then we got our weekend preview, and then we got real things, and then we're out of show. Oh my God, Anthony, it's Friday. Oh,
It's Friday.
I was going to say that means you're going to play that song later, doesn't
Yep.
it?
Yes,
all
sir.
right. Anyway, here's our defensive coordinator rankings. This week's Take Command. Take Command podcast from Odyssey Sports. I'm Craig Hoffman. He is Logan Paulson. All right, Dallas came in last in our offensive coordinator rankings. However, Logan, I do think they probably come in first with Dan Quinn, who is not just probably the best defensive coordinator in the division. He might be the best defensive coordinator in the league.
Yeah.
And if you look at the last 10 years of NFL football, I don't know how many guys have a better resume than Dan Quinn, going back to obviously leading those legendary Seattle defenses to multiple Super Bowls back in the day.
Yeah, and when you again, it's like it's so funny because everyone runs cover 3, everyone runs Tampa 2, everyone runs these line stunts that they are really, really good at in pass rushing situations on our first and second down. They just do it better. They just do it with a violence and a speed and a confidence that not a lot of teams like. When you turn on Dallas tape, now it's not always clean, it is like there's mistakes here and there, but the like when they're rotating to cover 2 out of this weird cover 3 man look, and the nickel guys, the Tampa 2 player, and it's just like, and everyone's flying to the spot. The rushers on the games, they're not running into each other. There's not these miscommunications. It's just like high definition stuff. And I think Dan deserves a ton of credit for that. Now, are they always super sound in the back end? No, but a little bit that's the personnel. Like Diggs is going to do what Diggs is going to do. But I think it's just, again, they don't do a ton of overly complicated stuff. They do like they do 3 things. They do them really well. They marry them together really well. They disguise their cover 2 or the Tampa 2s to look like zero man, right? They disguise their zero man to look like cover 3. And so you don't really know. And I remember when they played Washington in the last game, it was like the game that Cole Holcomb had a pick 2 years ago for a touchdown. You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And Taylor Heineke just had no idea what was going on the whole game. Like no idea what was happening. And then it was like they got one big play, and that was like the whole offense for the Commanders. And when you watch Dallas week in and week out, they do a really good job of like having a very detailed rush/blitz package, but also knowing what they do really well and then matching it really well at a high level. So I think that to me, it's easy to say he's number 1. I played for Dan. Like Dan is an awesome human being, an awesome coach, an awesome leader, an awesome motivator. Like that's another thing he's excellent at. He's good at building like a culture and getting guys to buy in at a super high level. And I love Dan Quinn, so that's like an easy pick for me. But I think also, despite my personal relationship with him, like the film supports what he's doing.
Yeah. So I think when you look at like kind of the rubric, if we take the same step back that we took after, looking at what makes the best offensive coordinator in the division, we take like what makes good, or what makes Dan Quinn great. And okay, that's kind of the rubric. It's some of the same stuff, right? Like, do you understand who your personnel is? Do you play to your strengths? Do you cover your weaknesses? Like, I think it's even more important on defense to play to strengths, cover weaknesses, and to be ready. And I think that can be both schematically and personnel wise. And that gets to Diggs, right? Like, they let Diggs be Diggs because the upside is worth it. And they put things in place to, like the safeties know that he's going to gamble. Right. Like they're cognizant of that. They're coached up to say like, hey man, Trayvon's going to probably take a couple of risks. Can you try to make sure that you cover for him if he does? Like you see those things. And so it's going to be interesting this year now that they have Gilmore on the other side, how they play that and how they kind of use this new strength they have But obviously they've done an incredible job of maximizing Micah Parsons the last couple of years. They've done such a good job of covering for when they've had defensive tackles out and some of the injury issues that they've had. Their linebacker situation has been super messy, and it's hurt them because talent missing hurts. But I think overall they've done a good job of consistently staying in games and being competitive on that side of the ball. And I also think that, we talked about McCarthy's, lackluster creativity.
He's conservative. He's very conservative.
that nature. Like, there's a reason that Jerry Jones was fairly desperate to keep Dan Quinn in town. Okay, McCarthy's our guy as the head coach, but like, we want the fire and ice of Dan Quinn as the guy on the other side of the ball that can bring up the room. And so I think that, his, just like Eric Bieniemy's impact is now larger than just his role as offensive coordinator. I think Quinn has that in Dallas. And I think it's, with all due respect to, I think we're looking at 4 good coordinators here. Obviously Sean Desai, we'll talk about at some point in these rankings, has a lot to prove doing it for the first time. But like, we're talking about 4 good coordinators, and I think Dan Quinn is safely number 1, which is saying something about Dan Quinn.
Yeah, safely, it depends. It kind of beauty's in the eye of the beholder, probably. But yeah, I mean, they just did a great job last year. They did a great job on all levels, and I think that's really important. I think that your comparison to EB there is really apt in the sense that, like, he's a culture guy as much as he is an X's and O's guy. And I think when you get guys, again, who are bought in, care about what you're doing, they want to play hard for you, I think there's a lot of value there. So, from a scheme standpoint, and I love that he got outside of his comfort zone, man. Like, his bread and butter was this cover 3, very, I guess, kind of vanilla conservative defense, right? Everyone, the Seattle cover 3, right? It was, everyone knew what to do. Like, I could draw it up in my sleep because you saw it so much after they were really good at it in Seattle. It was essentially the same version of like, Tampa 2, when the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were running Tampa 2 all the time, like, they just had the personnel to do it. And so for Dan to kind of say, like, this is where I made my money, like, how do I innovate off of this and kind of come up with a new scheme, I think, again, just deserves a ton of respect. Like, they blitz more now. They're more aggressive in terms of
his adaptation over the years and evolution has been really impressive to watch.
And so, like, Dan to me is number 1. And again, he's got a lot of the horses to get that done. I think a lot of people say, well, what about Wink, getting it done with less? I just think there's something about what Dan's doing down there in Dallas that is innovative. It's detailed. It's exciting. You can tell the guys are bought in. It'll be interesting how it goes, as the personnel starts to wane, because that's always what happens, like, because you paid your quarterback, you've got money invested elsewhere. But I think last year is a really good indicator for Dan, for sure.
All right, so that leaves Desai in Philly, Jack here in Washington, and then Wink Martindale in New York. Who do you got number 2?
Yeah, so I think it's kind of a 2-horse race here, and I think everyone's going to say Wink, and I think probably Wink deserves it given the personnel, but I also think Wink is exciting. He's exciting to talk about. He's like essentially like the most extreme offense you can think of, like the Texas Tech spread offense version of defense in the NFL. Like, he is doing some stuff that is just not, it's a little outside the box, and I think that is one reason why everyone's like, Wink Martindale. But I think Jack deserves a ton of credit, man. He came up with some really excellent game plans. Think about, them versus Philly, them versus Minnesota, like, and just able to kind of put his guys in good positions. And again, he's got good horses here too, but it's really good in a different way. And I think as much as Jack is kind of this polarizing figure, for stuff that he says, like, he's a smart dude, man. He's a really smart coordinator, and they've been very, very successful. Like, bringing in like Casey Toohill, bringing in James Smith-Williams, guys and then not losing a beat, like the evolution of Jamin Davis, like knowing when to push on players and when to pull back, like the innovative stuff they're doing with nickel and dime coverages, the way they utilize Cam Curl, the Cinco front, all that kind of stuff, man. It's impressive. And I look at like what they did against the 49ers, for example, and they did a great job against the 49ers outside of like 2 plays. The offense wasn't doing anything in that game. So I think Jack deserves a ton of credit. It's a little bit more traditional, I guess, in his approach when you're comparing it to Wink. But I really think it's like kind of either or and kind of whatever you're thinking about. And the only reason I might give the edge to Wink is just because they had not a lot of talent in the back end. And he was like, we're going to do this hyper aggressive blitz scheme with guys that aren't very good. I don't want to say they're not good because I think they played well, but I'm going to find a way to coach those guys up and do what I want to do and play this kind of high leverage defense that allows, not only elevates our defense, but also elevates the team and our offense. So I think it really just depends because I think they're both excellent. So.
Yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard to split hairs here because you're ranking two very different guys. Like you said, Jack, polarizing for reasons that have nothing to do with football.
Yeah.
I've talked about those on the radio before. That's a different show, different segment.
Yeah.
But like as a coordinator, as a personnel manager, what he did last year was really impressive. And by the way, he did it under fire, and it was a fire that he set under his own seat with the things that he said, and then off the field he said, and then the Jamin Davis stuff when he kind of lit Jamin up in the press, and you're going, what are you doing, man? Like, are you trying? Like literally, it felt like he was trying to get fired. But when it came to the Jamin stuff, he was right. Or at least it worked. Whether it would have worked anyway, and that actually wasn't the best approach. That's the kind of what's that called? Not a false. It's just it's an alternate universe that we'll never know. But clearly, A to B, it worked. And I think the other thing too, and talking to guys like Montez and, you listen to John and like these guys respect Jack and the positions that he puts them in and how he uses them. I think you're 100% dead on too with, the nickel and dime coverages that they use and how they've utilized a guy like Cam Curl and this Buffalo nickel stuff. They just figured out how to utilize the personnel that they had, which also, by the way, not an accident. I don't think that it matches the way a lot of modern offenses are running. Like we need to get more speed on the field, but we still need to be solid against the run. How do we do it? We invent this Buffalo nickel where we have a bigger safety, and it started with Landon. And then, in a way, it almost started with Landon as a way to get him to play linebacker without calling it linebacker. But you kind of invent this position that as a hybrid of roles and it works. And then it becomes a part of who you are defensively. So I think Jack's really impressive, but like you said, Wink doing it, like the question would be if we're going to rank coordinators, right? And again, this is a hypothetical, but it's the best I got in trying to separate the hairs here. If Jack had Wink's talent and Wink had Jack's talent, who would do better?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's like one of those alternate universes thing, but I think if I was going to say one thing is Wink seems to have like a superpower, like an elite trait in his blitz packages, like his ability to consistently just break protection schemes week in and week out, not just of the Commanders. I know I've talked about that a lot with like the Commanders and, the famous Charles Leno double bump, which we've talked about on this show a ton. But he does it every week. He does it every single week. So to me, I want a guy who's thinking about football that way, who's making blitz packages that way. And I know, that's an element of that Jack has developed, but it's, like Wink might be the best in the league at that, and I think having a coordinator like that with the talent on this defensive line. And again, like one of the things, Jack deserves a ton of credit for this too. Like he has cultivated an environment from a rush standpoint where it's like, I want you guys to work together as four guys rushing cohesively. I'm not going to work this crazy blitz scheme. I'm going to say like, hey, like you communicate with the end. If the end gets high, you're going to do this. If you get high, the end's going to play off of you. And when that works, it's almost unblockable, so they've gotten to it in different ways, partially because he's got maybe the best defensive line in football. I'm talking about Jack, but I think I would probably give the slightest edge to Wink, just the slightest edge. And again, that's team football up there. They're running the football a ton. They're possessing the football at a high level. So they're not leveraging him in quite the same way, but it's just, you don't see that ability to just break protections the way he does that often. And it's not a knock on Jack because I love what he's done here. Again, super innovative. And it's really like a 2A, 2B situation, like kind of depending on what you have and what you need. But I would give the slightest edge because we have to rank it to Wink.
I agree. And we've seen Wink do it, right? When he was in Baltimore, he had elite personnel and they were very, very, very good. Jack, in 2021, that was not great. That year of team football for them. So, but the year before 2020, they finished fifth in the league in defense, obviously making the playoffs as a 7-9 team. So, we've seen it. When you're coached long enough, you're going to have some level of mixed results. Jack's largely been very, very good. Wink's largely been excellent.
Yeah.
I would give a slight nod to Wink. We should talk briefly about Sean Desai, who is the young, exciting defensive coordinator in Philly. They really, really like him. He comes off kind of the Vic Fangio tree, which I think is probably, would you say like the Fangio style is become the most common in the league at this point? You got guys obviously like, what's his name? Brandon, the head coach in LA. Brandon Staley. You have coaches around the league off that Fangio tree. Fangio's still in the league, I think, as well. He just got a DC job in Miami, right? So, I think that Desai is very exciting. He's young. He's energetic. He's supposedly very detail oriented. I think he could be great at this, but he just hasn't done it yet. So when you're behind Jack Del Rio, Wink Martindale, and Dan Quinn, it's easy to put you fourth when you haven't done it yet.
Yeah, and I think the other thing about him that's exciting is the personnel seems to fit what Fangio wants. I was with Fangio in Chicago, and I guess Desai was like a defensive assistant. I don't even know that when I was there. So I feel bad.
Defensive quality control coach.
Yeah, so he was in the closet somewhere, typing up cards, and I never saw his face. But I will say the thing about Fangio, like when that system is good, and so basically like high level, the system is basically saying we're going to kind of buck traditional trends and not be +1 in the run game. We're going to rely on our defensive line and our linebackers to be good enough to play you 1-for-1, and then you have +1 with the back. So like with a 7-man blocking surface, most people will play an 8-man kind of run structure so that they can make sure they have one guy for the back. But basically what they're saying now in this Fangio philosophy is we're going to kind of be 1 down as a run team and then +1 in the back end. So that makes sense. That's where everyone's going. I mean, Jack does that a ton now. Like that's one thing. He's kind of cherry picked some of that Fangio stuff. And it's one of the reasons the defense here is so successful. And so when I look at Philly, I look at the personnel there, I'm like, holy cow, do they have the personnel defensively along the defensive line to do that? Because they basically they're asking the guys to play like a gap and a half. They're not true two-gapping, but they're basically playing like basically from like the head of the center to their gap and then to squeeze down the front side gap. So you got Jordan Davis, maybe the best two-gapping player the league's seen in the last like 10 years coming out of college. You've got Jalen Carter, you've got Cox, you've got all these kind of big hosses inside. They can for sure do that. Brandon Graham can set a vertical edge like nobody's business. So I definitely think they're going to be in a situation where they'll be able to run. So a lot of teams, like for example, Minnesota did a lot of Vic Fangio stuff last year, but they had some injuries along the defensive line that prevented them from running this gap and a half system. And then it crushed them because then they had to commit more resources to the run. It was a big mess. I don't think that'll be an issue at all in Philadelphia. I think they've got enough really good, like enough high-end horsepower up front that's going to be fine. And if they can detail it up, like it's tough to deal with that defense. They do some really fun stuff in terms of, like this kind of cover 3 match, quarters match type stuff that, again, Jack is doing here that's taken over the league. Like if they can get that done there, they definitely have the personnel to execute that at a high level. So that could be a really, really scary defense with some of that innovation. So
no doubt about that. All right, that's from Take Command. Apparently that I didn't edit very well at the end. Sorry, Anthony. That's on me. That's 100%. Don't you look at me. Don't look at me like that.
I was so caught off guard. Whoa, what? We got 2 Craigs?
I mean, talk about a scary proposition for planet Earth. You see the damage I do?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, one's good. One person ranting and raving about bike lanes is enough. One person doing the other things, that not editing his own sound clips is enough. That's although you have been working with me long enough. At what point do I get to start blaming you? Because we've been working together for a year now. Don't you know to double check my work by now?
I mean, the thing is, like, most of the time, it's pretty good. Like, we don't really run into too many.
Most of the time. But if you were to check, then it'd be all the time. Because I get it right most of the time, and on the rare occasion I didn't, you'd catch it.
I think it's just my overconfidence in you. That's probably
that's what I'm saying. Overconfidence isn't actually a good thing. I need you to have the correct amount of confidence in me, which is less.
I will temper my expectations, Craig.
Thank you. Chris, you see how I did that? See how I shifted the blame to Anthony there? It's
a crazy world we live in, man.
That's some professional radio hosting. Couldn't possibly be my fault. Produce it up better.
And also, I'm busy training someone today, correct? I think that's probably why.
You want to trade him on to having some better habits? Chris, if you work with me, double check my work. It might not be good enough. Pay attention at all times.
I was just giving him some pointers before the segment, so I didn't really have time to. Yeah, it was just a whole bunch of this.
We played it at 6 o'clock. You had 2 hours, bro.
See, what had happened was. Yeah, see, look, Okay, yeah.
See, what had happened was.
Exactly.
The old Stu Scott. May he
Yes.
rest in peace. May he rest in peace, the legend. All right, when we get back here on the Hoffman Show, it is our weekend preview on the Team 980. the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on our free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube, youtube.com/@theteam980. See, Haney, we should play Trombone Shorty more often.
I like this song.
You're vibing.
Nah, I really was.
Yeah. I'm prepared. At least right now, I'm prepared for the song in the next segment, just so you know. It's kind of one of those if you know things.
Or maybe I'll just surprise you, Craig, and not play it.
Wow, that'd be so disappointing. Maybe it wouldn't be. Maybe I'd actually be excited.
I don't think Chris knows about the song, so I'm going to make sure he doesn't know.
Chris, do you know the bit? Nope.
He doesn't know.
Nope. Okay. All right, I guess we got to do it. The bit, the weekly bit is coming at 6:45. All right. It's time for something else we do weekly. Typically, we do it a lot earlier in the show, but just kind of the way the rundown fell today with George Sedano joining us earlier, with Clinton Yates joining us earlier. Appreciate their time. You can always rewind in the Odyssey app and listen to those interviews. You can also rewind on the stream on YouTube. Actually, both of those are also already up at youtube.com/@CraigHoffman as well, if you would like. But we do our weekend preview. And let's actually start, Hanny, with Summer League because there's so much Summer League action this weekend. It's kind of crazy how the NBA squeezes so much in. But it is time for Victor Wembanyama to make his much-awaited debut in a San Antonio Spurs uniform. Obviously, it's a Summer League uniform. It's nowhere close to the same, but it is something that is upcoming for sure. Already today, Denver, Milwaukee. Let's see. Can I get a score in this one? Oh, we can. We got a box score and everything. Haney, tight one in the fourth quarter. 71-63. The Bucks on top of the Nuggets. Can I name a single player on either team? That is how you know it's real in Summer League. Oh, Taco Fall's playing for Milwaukee.
Oh, snap. Okay.
So is Marshawn Beauchamps. He's an actual NBA player. He's got 15. He's leading the Bucks. Mannion, actually, their guard, has 16. So you got a bunch of dudes. Vin Baker Jr. Damn. Drew Timme plays for the Bucks now?
Baker? Is that the Baker kid from Wichita?
I don't know, but it's Vin Baker's son, I'm guessing, because it's Vin Baker Jr. Are you too young to remember Vin Baker?
No.
Also, there's a kid, P. Watson. Who's that? He's got 20 for the Bucks. He's got 20 for the Nuggets. All right, that concludes our live Summer League update, and we're so sorry for it. Chicago and Toronto is coming up. Actually, that just tipped off. Portland and Houston at 7. So you got Scoot versus quick. Anthony, pop quiz. Which one of the Thompson twins is in Houston?
I don't know.
Pretty sure it's Amen. Amen Thompson. I'm sure he went first. He went to the Rockets.
Asar and then Amen.
Yeah, Amen Thompson's a Rocket. He was the 4th pick in the draft. His brother went 5th. These are the kinds of things that people need to know.
Yes, sir.
So you got the 3rd and 4th picks in the draft. Then you got Cleveland, Brooklyn, Charlotte, San Antonio. So pick 1 versus pick 2. Brandon Miller versus Wemby. Sacramento and Atlanta, Golden State, Los Angeles. Already today you had New Orleans and Minnesota. Anything particularly stand out from this box score? Not really. Okay. There's a Bruce Bowen II. Oh, my God. I feel so old. I'm not doing any more Summer League talk. It's just guys that I watched as a kid's sons. When did this happen? Oh, Lord. Anthony, it happens. It happens to us all. All right. Tomorrow, you got Miami, Boston, Dallas, Oklahoma City. So we'll probably see some more of Chet. So Oklahoma City, definitely one of the teams to watch in Summer Leagues. They've also letting their Jalen's play. So we'll see what they can do. So you got a bunch of young guys that are actually going to be on the big club for Oklahoma City. New York and Philly, Detroit, Orlando. That could be fun. 2 very, very young teams. Memphis, Chicago. Then 8 o'clock tomorrow night, ESPN2, Bilal Coulibaly's debut for the Wizards. But as we talked about earlier, much more interested in how Johnny Davis plays in year 2. So 8 o'clock tomorrow night. Then you got Milwaukee, Phoenix, LA, and Utah. Utah's got a couple fun young guys. Wizards for the rest of the weekend. They play again on Sunday, technically the host against Boston. And then they are off on Monday and at it again Tuesday against San Antonio. We'll see if Wembanyama plays in that. My guess is Wembanyama's done by then. San Antonio plays at Portland, so you get the Wembanyama Scoot matchup on Sunday. When I say at, Portland's the home team. It's all in Vegas. So you got that game on Sunday. So I would doubt that he plays more than 2, but if he plays a third, it'll be against the Wizards on Tuesday, which means that we're gonna have to stay up late and watch it. It's a 10:30 tip. Not a chance.
You don't got to worry about me staying up late and watching it.
Yeah, you're gonna be up to midnight no matter what watching Summer League, aren't you?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, good for you. Have fun. The open play is until Thursday, and then you got the playoffs, the Summer League playoffs after that, because that's something that everybody cares about. Okay. Great WNBA slate over the weekend as well. Mystics hosting the spunky Indiana Fever tonight. Number 1 pick, Aaliyah Boston, is in town. She's been crushing it lately. Like, all the WNBA media types are like, hey, you guys should give her the ball more. She shot like 90% in a game the other day. It's nuts. Atlanta, Chicago tonight. Vegas on the road at Dallas. Dallas gave Vegas their toughest game of the season the other night outside of the one they lost against Connecticut. And then Phoenix, Minnesota tonight as well. Tomorrow, Seattle and New York. So Stewie facing her former team. That is tomorrow, and then I believe that is the last game before the WNBA's All-Star break. There might be a couple more next week, but WNBA All-Star is next weekend out in Las Vegas. Other things to watch for over the weekend. The NWSL, of course, a bunch of MLS soccer as well. NWSL Spirit are out on the West Coast tomorrow. And then you got the British Grand Prix, Formula One racing. Interesting day of practice. So for those unfamiliar with how Formula One works, there's 3 practices on a non-sprint race weekend, which is this weekend. It's just a regular format. So you got practice 1 in the morning, practice 2 in the afternoon, practice 3 the next day in the morning, and then qualifying. And Max Verstappen has continued to dominate the sport, although he did only put up the fastest time in practice. They kind of measure practice by individual lap times as opposed to the total of the hour that you have on the track, because teams are running different programs. They're trying to say, oh, this is how we perform on these tires with this amount of fuel. There's all kinds of testing that happens throughout, and Max Verstappen did put up the fastest lap in both free practice sessions this morning, although it was by 22 hundredths of a second over Carlos Sainz and Ferrari. Now, what was interesting about this morning's practice session is the second practice session is Carlos Sainz was the only Ferrari on the track. Typically, there's 10 teams, 2 cars per team. And Charles Leclerc, the other driver for Ferrari, never even got out there. Leclerc talked about it afterwards with the press, which is a bite that we hopefully have, Anthony. All right, here's Leclerc.
FP2. Can you tell us what the issue with the car was and whether it's now been rectified, ready for tomorrow?
Yeah, there was a small problem on the car, but it's like this. I mean, I think the team has identified what went wrong. We've changed basically everything that was on the car, and it should be fine for tomorrow.
And in terms of those changes, nothing that can, take a step towards incurring any penalties or anything like that. It was an electrical issue from the team. Was the official line?
Yeah, exactly. An electrical issue, so it shouldn't have any influence on our weekend, apart from obviously the lack of kilometers and laps in FP2. That's a bit unfortunate because that's normally where we prepare the race, and Sunday seems to be dry, so we'll go a little bit into the unknown there, but tomorrow should be very different with rain around, so let's see.
Going to be a wild one if there's rain during qualifying. That always shakes things up. And as Leclerc said, the chance to kind of set the program of what they want to do for the race on Sunday. they're going to have to rely on the other Ferrari to do that for his car. Also a funky result, Williams, who's kind of probably the worst team in the sport, them or Alfa Romeo. They had 2 cars finish in the top 5 of practice this morning. It is their home race in Great Britain. Meanwhile, home race, of course, for Sir Lewis Hamilton. Finished just 15th in his Mercedes. George Russell, his teammate, did not do much better. Should be a fun one. Sunday morning is the race, so look forward to watching that. It's a 10 a.m. Eastern start time. That is our weekend preview. Anything else in our weekend preview? Miss anything, Anthony?
No.
Obviously, baseball wrapping up before the All-Star break.
Harry Potter game.
Chris said the Wizards have the Harry Potter game.
I'm sorry, what?
Not the Wizards, the Nats. I'm sorry, the Nats have the Harry Potter game this week.
Oh, that's right. They have the Harry Potter promotion.
Yes, sir.
So Nats are taking on the Rangers this weekend here at Nats Park. First one tonight. By the way, Rangers first team in baseball history to have 5 starters in the All-Star game after one of their players became an injury replacement. So over half of the people who will take the field as American League All-Stars on Tuesday are going to be Texas Rangers when the game starts. But yeah, you got Nats hosting the Rangers this weekend, including the Harry Potter promotion. So if you're a Wizard, go there. I see why you mixed that up, Chris. You got the Wizards and the Wizards, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's very confusing.
Are you going to any national games soon?
No.
Oh.
Doubtful, I should say.
I haven't been to one all season.
Which is sad because we work 2 blocks from the park and our show ends at 7 and games typically start at 7:05.
Yep.
I have been to one game kind of this year. I went to the terrible rain delay Mets game.
How do you kind of go to a game, though?
Because we saw 4 pitches, and then the game got delayed for 4 hours, and then they canceled it. We were gone by the second hour of the delay.
Oh, okay.
It was that game. That was one of the worst administrated rain delays in the history of baseball, in the 100-plus year history of Major League Baseball. Just disaster. Barely raining, but they screwed up the field. Oh, it's terrible. Anyway, yeah, that's the only game I went to this year. Should we make a show trip to the Nats game, Anthony? Should we pick a day?
Yes. Over the next 2 weeks, I definitely think we should.
Why are we doing this in July? I mean, not that it's going to be much better in August, but
August football season is going to be, here.
Yeah. All right. If we can find a day where it's going to be 82 or lower.
It was 82 degrees today.
But without feels like temperature. Not it's 80 it's 82 degrees, but it feels like 93 and you're walking through actual you're walking into a steam room when you go outside.
All right.
Because otherwise I can just watch from I can't watch from my couch, but that's a massive issue. But theoretically I could. We're not going to focus on it. We're just going to drive by it. I could watch from other places.
Yes.
But I'd also then have to watch Nationals baseball. Now that was a shot. Yikes.
That was a real one.
I don't know. They're I will say they're a lot more fun. They are a lot better than I think people expected. Even though they are 19 games under 500, but they're more fun than people expected. So I'm down for fun, and the games are shorter. All right, Anthony, you got me. We'll pick a day. We'll go. We'll have some hot dogs. Who else should we invite? Because it's just us. That's our show.
I guess the other afternoon show.
We could invite Grand Danny. They like baseball.
Yeah, they love baseball.
Clary wants to go. Do you think Darius will come?
I think Darius will come.
What if Darius? What if we could instead just go play Madden?
Ooh.
We just go play Madden with Darius.
I don't think
he'll smoke us.
I don't think he wants to play me.
What?
I don't think he wants to play me.
Is that a thing?
Huh?
What if I asked him that?
He may deny it. But I'm just under the impression that he doesn't really want to play. Because I've asked him multiple times. I brought my system here.
Wow. Okay. I feel like this needs to happen, and we need to stream it. I'll do fake play-by-play.
Ooh, okay.
Okay.
I think it will.
Summer content, baby. We're on.
I think it'll be a good game. It'll be better than Linnell and I's one-on-one basketball game. I promise you.
Literally anything would be if we were talking about the competition. All right. That's our weekend preview. Here's what's trending, and then Real Things closes out the show next.
Here's what's trending on the Team 980.
Northwestern football coach Pat Fitzgerald suspended 2 weeks after an investigation into a hazing incident or series of incidents at the school. Fitzgerald, who's been with the Wildcats since 2006, will begin the unpaid suspension Friday. Northwestern is not set to start preseason practices until early August, so real heavy-handed punishment there. He'll be suspended 2 weeks during a time when nothing happens. Elsewhere in the NL East, baseball already underway. 2 outs in the top of the first as the Braves are on the road against the Rays. Miami and Philadelphia matching up. That one just started 1 on, 1 out, top of the first for the Phillies down in Miami. That is what's trending. I'm Craig Hoffman on the Team 980. You really went for the you went deep, for not just straight for the chorus. Here we go, everybody. Yep. Last segment of the week. It is that time. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Always live on the free Odyssey app. Streaming on YouTube at youtube.com/@theteam980, where we send you into the weekend with Rebecca Black like clockwork. We also send you in the weekend with this. It is time for real things, real people said, into real microphones.
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5-11, not very good.
55-50.
Culture is actually damn good.
All right, I got to start with Kean Anthony. This is Carmelo's son. He's a very good player in his own right. But where did he say this, Anthony? Where was he with Paul George on his podcast, or was he somewhere else?
So he's down at Nike EYBL Peace Jam. That's
he's
where
down
he is
at
right now. Yeah.
Nike appreciates your shout out of the full name of the tournament and their sponsorship.
Oh,
Peach Jam. Okay, and he said what now?
So Paul George, best player in the NBA.
Yeah, best player ever.
Ever. Okay.
Not the goal. My goal.
Your go. Okay, give me your top 3 players of all time then.
Paul George, Kobe, and Carmelo Anthony.
I mean, look, if it's his favorite, that's fine. Favorite is different than best. I would hope he knows better on best. Paul George at his prime was exceptional. Really good basketball player. Can do a little bit of everything. So, like, if you want to value a skill set, you can do a lot worse than looking at Paul George. The results of Paul George's career would suggest he's not the greatest basketball player of all time. I do not need to beat up a kid for that. You're allowed to have favorites. Good job, Kean Anthony, on having a different favorite than everyone else. Tyrese Halliburton, favorite in our hearts. Anthony, what's that face for? Anthony just did a big old shocked face. What happened?
I can't find him.
You can't find Tyrese Halliburton? Oh my God, we lost Tyrese Halliburton.
All right, got
We
it.
found Tyrese Halliburton.
Yes.
Signed a big old contract extension and thanked the proper people.
There's so many people here for me to thank, but I'd be wrong to not start with my mom. I don't know, a lot of people don't know this. My mom missed my first ever game my freshman year of college because the plane didn't take off to get to Lubbock to go to watch Texas Tech. So before my freshman year, my mom had never missed a game of mine. So my mom has been my everything for me to get here. I can't even put into words to explain everything, but I'm just really appreciative of you, Mom, because of, all the stuff of us growing up and pushing me to, be where I am today and, making sure I could get to every trip, making sure my teammates made it to every trip. It just means a lot to me. So I love you, and I'm really appreciative of you. So thank you, Mom. I love you.
Well, damn. Tyrese Halliburton's a real one. I've actually heard like an outsized amount of Tyrese Halliburton because JJ Redick uses him as like a correspondent on his podcast, and I'm a frequent listener of the Old Man and the Three. That he's a smart kid, great dude. Indiana's got a real one, and he's real freaking good. Francis Tiafoe speaking in an interview about the one and only time is obviously he's playing at Wimbledon right now, but he was asked about the one time he ever played with Serena Williams.
The best S story I got, I'm playing mixed with her. We're playing Fed and benches. Fed acing her left, right, and center. She is aced again. Go sit down. She's like, oh, I don't get it. We can't lose this. Like, he's not better than me. I got 23, he got 20.
No way. You making this up.
That's when I was like, you gotta be different,
You have to be mentally like a little off, a little bit.
You have to be, bro.
Yeah.
This wasn't a joke, bro. She was like, I got 23, he got 20.
Nah, this is crazy.
That's so funny. She is so she's the best of the best of the best of the best are competitive psychos. Even like Steph Curry, who is much more mild-mannered, like away. He's not like Michael Jordan arrogant. He is a competitive psycho. You need to be. It's part of the deal. That's the only way you push yourself to be that good at anything. All right, do we have time for the Denny Avia thing?
Nah, not really.
Okay. Well, I'll just tell everybody. Maybe we'll play the sound of his reaction on Monday. Or actually, you know what? I'm feeling gracious. I'm feeling giving. Go to the Washington Wizards Threads account or Twitter account or Instagram account or whatever other Facebook account and watch the delightful video they made of what seems to be surprising Denny Avdia with a brand new jersey number. Denny Avdia going to wear number 8 this year, switching from number 9 with Rui obviously gone. So Denny Avdia going to wear 8 this year. All right. Thanks for listening and watching. We'll see you on Monday. Have a great weekend. See ya.